Go inside the studio with the Ricky Harris Media Podcast. Here's your host, Ricky Harris.
Welcome back to the Ricky Harris Media Podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And I say we again, we collectively, because it's not just me. It is the collective we that makes this show possible. I want to bring onto the show JP Sweet, broadcaster, sports broadcaster, podcaster, and all-around amazing guy.
It's been a while, man.
It has.
It's actually weird because we're testing for a different event. We're kind of using this as a background while we wait to see if that audio uploaded. So nothing's changed.
It's the same thing. It's like 90% testing and then 10% actual show. But that's kind of production in general, right? As your experiences so far, is
Yeah.
that? Yeah, that's just kind of the way it is. It's definitely a test of patience, right?
Well, considering it didn't 404 like we were joking it would have before we threw this segment on record, it does say all recordings have successfully uploaded. I don't know where they've uploaded, but we'll find out after we record this segment.
Yeah, we were talking about that. I talk about that on the show. It's kind of a recurring theme. I do have some ridiculous luck sometimes, some ridiculous bad luck to the point it's hilarious. Like a good example. Okay, my birthday was this week. So my wife and I were out. We're going to go get a cake. She got me a cake for my birthday. Cool. And then, of course, a tornado happened while we were getting the cake and just came out of nowhere, right? So,
Someone hearing Ain't No Love in Oklahoma by Luke Combs
exactly.
driving around in a Dodge Ram.
So I was thinking, oh no, what your upload is going to get to 95% and it's going to sit there for like 4 hours and then it's going to say failed.
Well, it said successful, so, it's somewhere. I don't know where yet. We'll find out later. It might be in Oklahoma with those tornadoes. I don't know where it's at, but we're going to find it later. But that's not what we're here to talk about now, is it? About my tornado audio.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious. So I am really just amazed that you're doing radio and it's something you've been wanting to do for a while, right?
Well, it's sports play-by-play, and it's absolutely wild that, I just finished up my 6th season doing it. And it's weird to be in this business that you and I have joked about for so many years about what would it be like to get back into the business for you, or if I broke into the business from, just talking to you once in a blue moon.
Oh, yeah.
And it happened, and it's just this wild situation being back, I guess we'll say. But now being in sports radio, it's amazing, and it's this real, like, surrealness sometimes when I throw that headset on.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just weird. Like, it's weird that, so when I run these broadcasts, it's weird being my own producer as well as the on-air talent.
Oh, yeah. That can get a little bit crazy at times because those roles don't necessarily mesh. And do you kind of find yourself a little bit, stretched thin sometimes because technical or, technical snafus?
Well, it's really weird when you don't know if you're on the air, because sometimes we lose connection to the we'll say server. Sometimes we lose connection to the Wi-Fi. Sometimes we lose connection to just each other. And it's kind of weird that you're sitting there still doing what's in the background, commenting on the game while you're trying to reconnect to something, not knowing entirely if nobody's able to hear you right now, or if everybody's able to hear you right now, and it's a tech problem on your computer, if it's a tech problem back at home base,
Yep.
if it's a tech problem on your board. It's wild trying to balance both jobs, but it's an amazing experience every time I fire it up, get on the airwaves.
That's a good point. I think about a lot of different things that have changed over the years since I've done radio. And when I did radio professionally, it was largely analog, so there wasn't very much delay. It was really, and we didn't have any kind of, content delay either. So you could actually just put a headset on, and if you were within range of the station, hear it. So you always had that as a backup. And a lot of times we use that as our primary way of monitoring. But yeah, of course, when you're doing that kind of thing, you've got that delay. So you really can't do that because you're going to hear yourself back in your ears, like 5 seconds later. So yeah, I imagine that is pretty annoying. So
I think you figured it out one of those nights that you rolled tape for a reel for me. But I think we figured it out. It's right about 25, 30 seconds delay between what I'm saying live in the arena to when you're getting it on the streaming app. And that's not saying we know what the delay is from me saying it in an arena to when it goes over the air
right
to a car radio.
Yeah. So it's not logical to monitor it directly like that. So yeah, you ideally need someone just monitoring, and then they give a thumbs up 30 seconds later, but at least right? Yeah.
Right. Well, it's fascinating too. Like you said, back in your day in the business, all those years ago, it was all analog.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've got guys that run 2 or 3 different setups. Some of these guys run the old. You need the Ethernet cable plugged into a box. The box plugs into a board, and that's what transmits the signal back to the station.
Yep.
For us, it's an air card.
Yeah, it's all digital.
Air card.
Yep.
Yep, it's all digital. And then now you've got guys using those Roadcasters, and that's what they're using. So everything's on their Roadcaster.
The Roadcaster is really cool. I remember you talking, we talked off the air about that. Yeah, that's a really neat device, kind of all in one chunk there. And it records multi-track too. That is really neat. Yeah, it's interesting how certain things are better, but certain things are, I don't know, a little bit, not necessarily worse, but it's, it takes some head scratching. But it's great that, you have that option of how, the workflow you like to do. I personally like that kind of right smack in the middle, the mixture between analog and digital, where you have your digital devices, but you also have analog, to give you that tactile feel, real buttons and everything, but also to kind of give you a little bit of a backup too. So, if your mix inside the box is not doing quite right, you can always bring it out of the box and mix it before you go in. And, it gives you a lot of flexibility. But man, when you do all that, you really do need a dedicated engineer, because it starts getting extremely complicated. And then you're trying to do the show at the same time. I mean, run into technical problems like that.
Well, especially in the world of sports, because you can throw to break if something happens during a standard morning show, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're just doing live on KWFMI, we'll be right back. You can throw to that and you're not going to miss anything because you're just reading news. In the world of sports, okay, if I'm calling this and we have a problem on, 2nd down and 8 from the 32-yard line, now I have to throw to an ad. You have to let the whole ad play. Well, now you're going away for 30 to 60 seconds. You can miss a score. You can miss a key moment in the game.
Yep.
Because now you have to take that break to recalibrate something on the soundboard. You have to redo the Wi-Fi. You have to redo the just base connection to the studio itself. There's a lot of variables that go into sports versus, I think, your conventional morning shows, your midday shows, your music guys. I think there's a lot more variables that are out of your control, and it's just timing issues when those issues arise in the world of sports. You've listened to me do hockey.
Yes.
Hockey is a sport where there is no break.
No.
You're talking until you have nothing left in your lungs because they're going up and down the ice. All right, they enter the defensive zone and they pass the puck forward. Puck is in neutral ice. They go to the red line, blue line. They enter the offensive zone, far side, near side, face off, circle, swing and a miss, and a goal on the rebound. There's a lot of that goes on. There's not a lot of time to go back and be like, well, now we're on phantom power, so we need to fix that because now it's just all in mono and it sounds terrible, or it's a case of, pretty sure the timer on my laptop has stopped moving. So that means we've definitely lost. We've definitely lost connection to the studio. So now I have to redo this and then replay the goal call like it's either A, happening, or B, I'm trying to repeat it as exciting as it was when it happened because the computer froze.
That's an interesting point, and it's something I'm fascinated with production. Even when I got out of the business, now I'm back in it kind of part time, but that kind of stuff is, I think, a lot of stuff that people watching and listening at home or in their car don't really think about. But yeah, that's all stuff that has to be accounted for. That can get really stressful in a hurry doing live. And it brought up a memory when I was at a NHRA race. It was the U.S. Nationals in Indianapolis. And I called back here and talked to someone that was watching it live. And it was actually a round behind on television. And then slowly it catches up and the finals are live. And it's almost like the broadcast was like a DVR and it was catching up. And I was wondering if you could do something like that, where when you take a break, you're recording and then at that point you're in a delay. I don't know. It would take really a delay box, but if that would, give you some backup and,
Well, I think it would absolutely take a delay box, but I think it would also take, a guy back at the studio to try to keep it synced up to the point where when you take a break, it's not going to come back and he scores!
Right.
Because now you went away from the delay when you're supposed to come back to, well, welcome back to the arena here in Ville.
Okay.
Yeah. Or could you imagine like a football game, like trotting out for the game-winning kick? They try to ice the kicker. All right, we have to get one more 30-second commercial in. When we come back, it's time for the game-winning attempt.
Right.
You come back, and the disappointment on the field, ladies and gentlemen, this is unfathomable. And you don't know what happened or why there's everybody's disappointment because somebody somewhere messed the delay up, and now it's just going to the post-game show because you missed the finish. Which, by the way, happened to me to an extent in one of my broadcasts one time.
Oh, really?
We had the finish. So if something happens to the air card or something happens elsewhere, it'll drop the connection to the studio.
Okay.
And it was one of those wild finishes to a game. And I didn't notice because I'm trying to call the end of this game over the computer I'm using. And I look down and see it froze. And I'm like, oh, God, I just gave one of the best calls of my life. And nobody heard that. So I'll come back and go, all right, welcome to the post-game show. This happened. This was really exciting, but you didn't hear it. And I just talked to myself like I'm an insane person, and that's a thing now.
Yeah, I was just wondering if, something like that. Again, it would take a dedicated production person to do that. But yeah, you're just recording it and then play it back. So, I mean, would that technically be live even though it's like 40 seconds late? I guess so, right? Because they put 40 seconds delay on stuff.
I think you'd have to classify it as like live to tape. Like you're doing something like an hour and a half later.
Yeah.
Like,
tape delay.
From like the early mid 2000s when that was a big thing, where they would tape delay baseball games, or they would tape delay hockey games to air. They're going to air on the East Coast at 1:00 in the afternoon. Well, we're going to tape delay because we have Bill Dance Outdoors or whatever local fishing show we have to air at noon.
Oh yeah.
So, and that was something you'd listen to the old baseball broadcasters about specifically. They would be so confused because sometimes there are clips out there of old baseball broadcasters having conversations that shouldn't go out over the air. Nothing like FCC violations, but just stuff that shouldn't go over the air because they think they're in a tape delay game, but they're not. It's live in this market, but it's tape delay here. And then you hear a producer come in and you just hear the sound of like paper crumpling, and it's them handing them a note.
Right.
And it's we're live, dummy.
I remember that was kind of the early days of streaming. I would pull up different sports and watch it, and you would get what they call in the business, I guess they still call it that, the clean feed. So basically the feed directly off the live truck. So you would get all of that, between breaks. Yeah, the mics will still be hot. You'll hear them chit-chatting. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff, but it's very strange.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of live entertainment in any form or fashion, is you're going to have those bobbles and hiccups, and it's going to be everywhere if you look for them.
Oh yeah.
Like there's been times I've had to give the old apology line twice because somebody has said something horrific in the background.
Oh yeah.
I remember doing a football game like 3-4 years ago on the road. And I always, and you love this when you listen to my broadcast, I run a crowd mic. Everywhere I go, if I don't have a color commentator, I run my crowd mic. So I had this crowd mic hanging out of the window of a press box. And by hanging out the window, I don't mean I just threw this thing out the window and it's dangling in the wind. Taped it to the edge of the windowsill. And these dudes down below me are just the absolute, like, if you could think of an FCC violation word to use,
okay, yeah,
they used it. They definitely used it to the point where I just had to unplug the microphone. Like I leaned down and said what I was doing, and they looked at me and they gave me the bleepity bleep. You're not from here. We don't care.
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh well, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a penalty on a play. Flag goes out, and all you hear is this guy, like I go, and we have laundry on the field. We'll await the call from the officiating crew. What the beep is that? What is that? That's not a beep and hold. You don't know what a hold is. Like,
Alrighty. Yep.
And I know somebody's broadcasting that at an open house in a different town.
Right.
Because they told me they were, and I'm like, somebody is looking at a brand new Chevrolet right now, and that's what they just heard.
I mean, that's the emotion, right? That's real. That's a real moment. But you do have FCC regulations, and that is a very interesting subject that will go on to the end of time, because that is a clear example of technical versus artistic decisions, right? Collaborating or colliding in this situation. It's a real moment, but you can't have it going over the public airways, as JP mentioned, it going out over just the radio and just anybody can tune in. It's basically just like turning on a PA in a public forum. You got your 2,000 watt PA, and then you say something extremely inappropriate to where anybody passing by can hear in a public forum. But I will say that's why conversation is very important, and context is very important, and also the responsibility of the broadcaster. And delays are important. It is important. I agree that it's not. It should not be used to alter facts, distort facts, censor facts, or all out just, eliminate facts. But that's a subject that can go on for days and days and days. FCC versus Pacifica. If you want a comical deep dive into that, George Carlin, check that out. The seven dirty words that are never allowed on television. And I love how he says television, but apparently they were allowed on the radio, right? Not technically, but that was a strange time in the 70s, right? Where, yeah, everything was being tested. FM was new. All right. Well, thank you guys and gals for listening. JP will be back on the air with us next week. See you guys and gals next time. Later. Bye.